So there is a question on experience and thoughts. See, experience, any experience is non-dual. There is no separation between the experiencer and experienced. When we are intensely engaged in something, there's only experience when we are intensely engaged in something. When there is experience, there is no experiencer and experienced. It is non-dual. Okay. There's no duality in experience. Then what is there in experience? Let us say a flower appears. What is flower? Flower is a perception through sense organs. Okay. A perception is a thought. The perception is, I see a flower, there's a perception. And the perception is an arising or appearance in consciousness. I cannot separate out the perception from consciousness. So what I am seeing is a conditioned consciousness in the form of flower. The experience and experienced, what I'm experiencing is a conditioned consciousness only. There is no separation between the experiencer and experience. The seer and seen are one in experience. This is a non-dual experience. A experience is always nameless. There's no name for the experience. The naming happens when the mind comes into picture. Experience is always in the present. The experience cannot be in the past. All experiences are always in the present. All experiences are in the now. Okay. Experience is not in the domain of mind and time. Experience is always in the now, which is means the self, the consciousness. Experience is always beyond time because there's non-duality. Okay. It is not a thought. Experience the appearance of consciousness as a conditioned consciousness. It's not a thought. When you are experiencing something, it's a nameless experience. A nameless experience is non-dual. Who is the experiencer? The consciousness. Consciousness also no name. Consciousness also, awareness also no name. So experiences can keep changing, but the knowing cannot change. So experience also is a temporary arising in consciousness in the form of perception. A temporary. Okay. Perception arises in consciousness and fall back into consciousness. It's like a wave rising in consciousness, falling back into consciousness. Wave rising in water and going back to water. Perceptions arise and perception fall back. And everything is happening in consciousness. Okay. Experience is always non-dual. But the mind comes into picture. Mind will give, now the experiences are happening beyond the mind. Experience is happening in consciousness. The mind comes into picture. Okay, mind also is nothing but a form of consciousness only. Mind also is consciousness only. So let us say I experience the flower. Okay. So the mind brings in the concept of memory into the experience. Memory is always related to the past. The past is brought and superimposed on the experience which has happened now. Now is also, when I say now, it's not even present moment. It is happening in the consciousness. The now is beyond, it's not in the present moment. It is in the presence, which is consciousness. So the mind comes into picture, then time comes into picture. The mind says, this is flower and this is me. It splits the experience into the subject and object, the thought. Subject is me and object is flower. it brings in the concept of separation. The duality comes into picture. Okay. The nameless experience, when it is given a name, the duality comes into picture. Name called flower only can come from memory. So memory is always past. The past is brought and superimposed on the experience, which is the present, which experience has happened in the present moment, actually in the presence. So that timeless experience is given a name and form by the mind based on the memory, which is past. Okay. And mind is always thought. A thought cannot know other thought. A thought is also an object. It's not a, only consciousness can know anything. The thought cannot, thought is an object. But there is a one special thought called I thought, which is called ego, which claims I am consciousness. The experience of consciousness, the I thought claims and says, I only experience this thought, I only experience this flower, this is flower. So it takes the position of the consciousness, I thought. I thought is also an object, but this is a special thought because it takes the position of the consciousness. It says, I am consciousness, and says, the Sakshi or the witness, it claims as my own experience and says, this is flower, I experience the flower. So any experience gets broken into two. It's called object thought and subject thought. Aham vritti and idam vritti. Okay. Object thought is called idam vritti and subject thought is called aham vritti. Aham vritti is called I thought. I thought claims that I am consciousness. Okay. And says, gives the name called flower based on the memory. So where is the memory? Memory is also in consciousness. Memory is also another thought which appears from consciousness. And this one nameless experience is given the name and split into subject and object. And where is the knowing? Knowing is always in consciousness, but thought claims it. The object claims it. One thought cannot know other thought. Only the ego thought claims to take the position of the Sakshi or the witness and says, I only saw. Okay. In any knowing, there are three aspects: Jnana, Gnatra, Jneya, and Jnana. Knower, known, and knowledge. Okay. So knower is a thought, the knowledge is a thought, and knowing is not a thought. Knowing belongs to the self, consciousness. Knower, knowing, and knowledge. The knowing, when I say I know, mind cannot know. The consciousness is the knowing principle. The mind is only thought, object. But the I thought claims I know. So it is taken the knowing position, it is taking the position of knowing or awareness from the mind, Sakshi. The object thought has impersonating the Sakshi and saying, I know. So in reality, the knower is a thought, known is a thought from the memory. Knowing is not a thought from memory. Knowing is the consciousness. So in knowing, the knower and known appear. Okay. Knowing is always continuous. Knower and known disappear, also the knowing continues. The flower disappears, also knowing continues. Knowing is Sakshi or the Atma, the awareness. Okay. The known object is also a thought, which is nothing but a consciousness form. The knower is also a consciousness form. It's also thought. So in reality, there's only consciousness appearing as knower and known. Two perceptions and two thoughts. And what is there is knowing. All experiences are perceptions. All perceptions are changing. But what doesn't change is the knowing. So there's knowing is the only reality. The consciousness is the only reality. Perceptions appear and disappear. And the perceptions are given as the name by mind. And in the name in the form of thought. And thought has two thoughts. One is subject thought and object thought. Aham vritti and idam vritti. Aham vritti impersonates the consciousness. The impersonator, ego is the impersonator. Ego is not real. Really, only consciousness is there all throughout. Consciousness experiences itself in the form of objects. Unchanging reality of consciousness, which is knowing, experience the object, which is changing form of consciousness. The changing form of consciousness is the consciousness cannot change. The mind gives the illusion of changing form of consciousness. Ultimately, everything objective is nothing but mind, and mind is nothing but a form of consciousness. This is the answer for the question. What is the relationship between the experience and thought?
So there is no thought during experience?
That is also a mental modification. The mind modification is an experience. Okay. In this mind modification, it is not coming from the memory. It is happening in the present moment. The modification of the mind is happening in the present moment is a perception. That's not a thought. It's happening in the present moment. Okay. The moment it brings from the past, it's a thought. The mind can appear as a perception. Mind can appear as a thought. Thought is related to past and future. The perception is the present moment.
Experience stops when thought arises.
Experience gets broken when the thought arises.
Knower and known are thoughts that appear in the knowing.
Right.
What about experience? Does that also arise in the knowing?
Experience is arising in the knowing. Okay. Experiences keep changing. Experience is the mind. The mind creates the appearance of the other. Okay. But it's a perception. Appearance is a perception. Perceptions keep changing. Okay. Experiences keep changing, but knowing doesn't change. Experience also appearing in knowing. Okay. Thank you.